Great. Well, welcome. It's wonderful to see such an amazing audience here today. We have a wonderful panel planned for you, and we're looking forward to an amazing time. So I think it's really an amazing opportunity that we have here today. We have Call of Duty, God of War, and Nancy Drew all represented on the stage at the very same time to talk about diversity. So I'm really gonna love putting us all together here. So thank you all for taking the time on this important topic. So then, what we'd like to do is take a moment. Our panel is told about creativity, and diversity. What does love got to do with it? And if you think about it, what creativity is sort of the power to create something new. It's to buck the status quo. And unconscious bias is the thing that divides us, the thing that separates us one from another. It's almost like two separate trucks, on the same highway, pulling in different directions. And diversity is the thing that we can use to turn unconscious bias around so that both of those go in the same direction. So why is this important? So studies have shown that diversity brings financial benefits and better decision making and higher quality to the table. So what do we do? What do creativity and diversity have to do with each other? Why is this so important? So we start with you.
Sure. Yeah, thank you. Mm-hmm. Thank you for the intro, and thank you to GamesBeat and Dean for letting us talk on this important topic in our industry. I think for me, there's sort of two buckets, if you will, one personal and one professional. On the personal side, I've got an 8-year-old daughter. She's brilliant, and she's a female, and she's not Caucasian. And I think about her coming into this industry, an industry that I've been so thankful and fulfilled by, and I want to leave it in a place that's maybe more conducive to her and her merits and talents, not based off her gender or the color of her skin. So that's sort of the personal side. In fact, she's watching at home right now, so love you, sweetheart. On the professional side, I think your research says exactly what we know, right? Teams with increased diversity, both ethnicity and gender, are more productive, they're more innovative, they hit budgets better, and they hit deadlines better. So for this industry and for Sledgehammer Games, I want our resources, our development staff, to sort of represent the proportions that our gamers represent, because I think that's where the collective experience will allow us to have better experiences that drive ideas, that drive quality for fans.
Mm-hmm. Right. And then Megan?
So the reason I believe that creativity is the mother of diversity is because it takes an open-hearted mind to genuinely welcome diverse people, perspectives, and as a result, products. Because people know when they're not respected as equals. They can feel it. And that's why most people only bring half of themselves to work, because they don't feel safe enough to let down their guards to truly collaborate. By using creativity to problem solve, it actually inspires diversity. And that's the only way we wanted Her Interactive in a hostile environment. We created a diverse and inclusive culture from the start, so when the retailers refused girl games, we rallied together and found another way in, which was Amazon. So by not using creative leadership, we are losing out on so many revenue opportunities, new content experiences, new markets, and new audiences.
And that's what you would call creative leadership then, Megan, in terms of, didn't you drive like 8.5 million in sales and something like 9.5 million units for Nancy Drew?
Yeah, I didn't, I came from filmmaking, so I didn't go to the corporate side. And so creative leadership is simply encouraging what's possible for the greater good. It's leading with curiosity to discover new ways to do things instead of sticking with the status quo. And in our case, we redesigned the systems since the system didn't include us.
Great, Rue.
So, I mean, the reason why, for me personally, and I think that one of the best ways to illustrate why diversity is so important for creativity, I think it is a quote from Einstein that basically said, creativity is seeing what everybody else is seeing, but thinking what no one else has thought. Ultimately, that's kind of what it is, right? Our industry, every industry is made of ultimately people. People are the creators, people are the consumers. And in order to achieve that same spread on the consumer side, to reach people, you need to start by having that same diversity on the creative side. And for all of us as developers, especially in a team, to look at exactly the same problem, but to find a solution for it, you need different thinking. And different thinking comes from your background, your culture,
Right.
your gender, your religion, whatever it is that makes you different will make you look at exactly the same problem in a different way. That's kind of how we've always worked, and we've kind of encouraged our team, because they're diverse, to look at something the same way and come up with different solution to it.
Right. Yeah, and then one of the major obstacles to that is this unconscious bias, right? This, it's an obstacle, it's sort of a way of thinking. It really puts walls between people. And as we've seen online harassment grow over the past 2 years from a storm inside the game industry to the national political scene now in terms of diversity, we've seen many companies addressing this diversity issue. So I'd love to ask the panel, is the answer diversity quotas, or is it something else? What are you doing at your studios to address this?
I could start, we could go back this way.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I've heard both opinions. I've heard that people truly believe in setting quotas to solve some of the issues that we have. But for us, it's always been a meritocracy. Quotas go against that completely. For us, it's always the same thing. There is a position open. You want to be a developer, you need to be good at it. It doesn't matter where you come from. Ultimately, nobody will respect you if you can't do the job, whether you're a man, a woman, whether you come from a minority, whether you come from anywhere, you need to be respected for the job that you do. So I don't truly believe in quotas, but I do believe in the fact that, ultimately, in order to help the diversity in your studio, there are plenty of ways. Quotas are probably an extreme, I would say. It's kind of almost last resort, the way I look at it. There are so many ways that we can basically help it, that we should look first to the natural solutions as humans that we have, rather than imposing something that actually might also
So what's
change
a
the balance.
natural solution? I'd love to hear more about that.
I mean, start with culture. Culture is basically at the root of everything that we do, right? A team culture, how we work, how we develop. One of the simple things that we've done is create a small group of people. We're about 100 developers. But we've created a very tiny group of people, 5 to 6 people, who manage our culture. And they are from a diverse group. What they do is that they organize everything from team and company-sponsored things to outside. But because they think differently, they will come up with different solutions. That welcomes other people that come to the company that get hired to go like, I didn't know you guys had this. This is awesome. I would love to do that.
Yeah.
It's a very simple way of doing it, and sometimes we allow culture to dictate its own path. But the reality is that you got to grow culture. It's like, kind of like a child in your company,
right.
and you got to grow that child.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. There's as a consultant working with, teams like the people that develop The Sims and Diner Dash, installing things like weekly play tests, and then being sure that you're really diverse in recruiting is an awesome idea, because then your team, gets exposure to that. And then even having, playing games or eating pizza with these folks afterwards, then you get that really nice social bonding, and that can help grow your culture as well. Maybe you get some recruiting. Yeah, Megan.
So I think it's great that companies are putting in place diversity quotas and those type of tactics, but it doesn't really address the root of the problem, which is the need for leadership transformation. People want to be a part of a community, not a workforce. And unconscious bias is holding us all back. So it requires that we first become conscious of our biases so we can recondition the way we think to act differently, to lead more inclusively. True diversity, and I totally agree with you, requires a cultural reformation. And so not only do we need to ensure that diversity is hired, we also need to ensure that we put diverse people in leadership positions so they are in the room also making those key decisions. And we need to ensure that the current leadership team, we invest in them to make sure that they are also diverse thinkers. So the call to action is to reimagine how we fundamentally do business. And in order to do that, we need to tap into our creative intelligence, or rather relearn it, since we were all born with it. And that's when we're going to inspire collective intelligence, which is actually what diversity brings.
Awesome. Do you have a, you want to,
Yeah, I mean, I agree with both sentiments. It's interesting, we talk about unconscious bias. As humans, we're psychologically sort of hardwired to shortcut and pattern match, right? And in psychology, I think it's called the availability heuristic, and it means that you look for success models that you've seen in the past, right? Terrible example, but for example, if you were to show a picture of a cylinder with lines coming out of the top to a farmer, they might say that's a wheat combine. And if you show it to a hairdresser, they'd say that's a brush, and maybe you show that same picture to a game developer, and they say that's a Pokemon Weedle or something, right? So we try and take away that availability heuristic when we start interviewing candidates and talking about solutions to add diversity to our studio. So we do things like blind boxing on resumes. And it's a very simple concept where first screening of resumes, when they come in, you remove the names, right? So nobody can look at the name and draw whether they're a female or a male or what their ethnicity might be, right? And it's really powerful, right? We do the same thing outward facing, like on our social comms. Like we redesigned our website. A year ago, our website was really a Call of Duty website, right? With a big Call of Duty hero art guy with a gun and a bunch of developers that maybe weren't as diverse looking as they should be. And now you look at it, and it very much outwardly shows that this is an inclusive environment. It's an inclusive environment for diverse candidates to come and be part of. And it takes that sort of unconscious bias off both sides.
Right.
So we also have a culture committee. I think that's great. We have a women's committee as well, where we get together once or twice a month, which I love, and we hear from the many women developers at Sledgehammer Games concerns about the culture, concerns about the game, and that helps drive more inclusive thoughts. And we do use candidate quotas, but not for hiring, but at least to ensure that in senior positions you're considering diversity candidates. And we've seen that used in other industries. I think for me, I think it was 95 or 92, the NFL, which probably had the worst case of
There are many, but
they introduced that sort of concept for head coaches and senior leadership positions. It didn't say you had to hire diversity as a head coach, but you had to interview. And you look at it today, and it's really improved. Now, they got work to do, and so do we, and I'm sure the industry does. But some of those little steps can make a big impact, and we've certainly seen that at
and I
Sledgehammer
think
Games.
it's recognizing how insidious unconscious bias is. It is automatic. It's an automatic assessment, usually based on social grouping. I have a background in psychology, a degree from Stanford, and it's just a snap judgment that puts somebody in another group. And so it's, on the outward facing, we want to look at what we can count, what we can see, but then inward facing, we also need to look for clues. And I had this wonderful, really short encounter last night about the Juilliard music program. And really quickly, what they did in recruiting, they introduced blind auditions, so similar to your blind box thing. But what they were really confused about is the first time they ran that, they got the same results. So it was, 10% women, mostly men. It's like, well, wait a minute, what's going on? They ran it a second time, and they did one change. They said, okay, take your shoes off. And the performers walked on stage without their shoes behind the screen, and they got 50-50 male to female. Unconsciously, the judges heard the women's shoes, and they didn't know it, but that affected their assessments. So they're looking for these things all up and down is really good. So, and I think that's a great example of we're looking for really a new type of leadership that's coming. We want to, from the ground up, really look at our processes and encourage diversity. So Michael, what approaches are you doing as a leader in your company to foster diversity? Is there anything else you want to share?
I think it just starts by having it part of your active dialogue of your culture. I really do. And I think we can point to the industry now, and we know that half of all gamers are women, And there are programs around the US. USC has a game design school that's graduating 50% of the graduates as female developers. And
Pokemon Go is 63% women.
there you go. And yet you look at Silicon Valley where we're located, and high tech is maybe 20 to 25%. And you ask the question, what aren't we doing? And have that be a powerful part of the conversation within the leadership team. Right. I think, for me, it's always been something that's been important and maybe rolling around in the back of my head over my last 20 years in the industry. But, we have to be change advocates. You need to take an active role in talking about it and leading the change in your organization.
Yeah, hopefully.
So Megan, why do you think creative leadership is so important?
Because creativity is the most important leadership skill in the 21st century, so we should be leading with it. It's the antidote to unconscious bias because it encourages us, it inspires us to do and be better. And creativity has been dismissed in leadership historically because it couldn't be quantified. But that's no longer the case. There's significant research that underscores both the logic and the benefits of leading with creative intelligence supported by analytical intelligence. And the other reason is the content. The media stories we tell have an effect on us on some level. And so while I believe that there needs to be diverse content for as many diverse preferences as there are, I also believe that as leaders, it's our responsibility to not only inspire our employees, but also inspire our customers by the products that we're creating. And I also predict that those companies who are not investing in creative leadership in the next 5 years will lose market share to those who do.
Yeah, following on that, the Pokemon Go, it's like a 30-30 split, 30-30 split between 13 to 17, 18 to 30 years old, and 30 to 50 years old.
Right.
In terms of those demographics. So we've got everyone from 13 years old to 50 years old. So it's not just gender, right? It's also age and background and access to technology.
That's right.
And I think there's a lot to actually celebrate. So Rue, I would love to ask you this question. What approaches have you done in terms of diversity? What approaches have you done about changes you've made in your company?
I mean, we've started off actually from a point where I think we went I want to say the cookie cutter company when we started. I mean, we're a AAA developer, not many left around. We're still independent at what we do, not many independent AAAs left. But we started already from a group of 3 people, I mean men, but 3 people that came from diverse backgrounds. We were not kind of, Western American people, actually all 3 of us were European. I came from Asia originally. So it already kind of built in us this kind of natural tendency to look outside for a lot of things. Very early on, I think the first 10 hires that we had in the company, I think half of them were foreigners. We hired them from Europe. We literally went out and said, I know how hard it is to get an H1. I got my own H1 back in the 90s when nobody was getting them for you, so you had to do your own work. So those are kind of the barriers that I see companies that I talk to that are starting now see. They go like, well, how do you hire? Why would you go outside? It's so hard to get somebody. It's doable. It's hard, but everything that is good is hard, ultimately. If you're going to look for talent and you're going to go outside, try to seek it, and we did. We were very diverse at the beginning. Of course, as you grow, the community around you kind of get to know you, so more and more people apply. So then that foreign community actually is balanced out, and then you get more local people. But still at the company, I think we make a massive effort, for example, to hire outside. We do actually quite a lot, and we go above and beyond to basically get O1s and H1s and whatever we can to get people from all over the world, because what they bring with them is not just the talent, the raw talent that they have. They will bring that perspective with them to you, and that's kind of how we've grown.
Yeah.
The one thing that I wanted to actually just quickly touch on, which is we talk about diversity and the steps to take to basically increase diversity to build creativity as such. The one slippery slope is that I've heard people, and again, taking drastic steps to basically push diversity through. My personal opinion, you can't force diversity.
Exactly.
You have to cultivate diversity. Diversity forced on people will literally make your team implode. That's just never a good solution for anything. So it's very tricky to say, all right, we have some solutions that we put in place. It has to work for you. If you force it on the culture you have already, you might find out that it's absolutely not what you were expecting or what we saw. But there are plenty of ways basically to get there.
Right, yeah, and I think that you've got the hiring and diversity. A lot of studios that we work with have an issue that their networks are, gender or regional or age isolated, and so I just don't know other people. And so working on that is a really great way out. And then inside, looking at the leadership roles that people play, being sure that we give diversity in like the small meetings, like running a meeting or running a small project, being sure that we have those opportunities to, for people of diverse backgrounds to have that, and then just reward the heck out of whatever it is that they're doing so to build their confidence as they move forward. We're running low on time. I wanted to give the panelists each a chance to go through, kind of 3 tips, takeaways for the, for the audience. And then for folks that liked the content and people that are on the live stream, we have here we have at the table in the back outside the conference, we have a set of best practices for fostering a culture of diversity, contributed to by all of the panel here. It's a wonderful takeaway, and you can contact us online via email if you would like a PDF for the live stream audience. So let's just do a quick wrap up of like, what are 3 practical tips? Like, how can we really get diversity in there?
Yeah, for me, I think the light bulb moment came on maybe later than it should have, right? And so I wish somebody had just said, hey, this is why it's important. 1, you'll get better quality, more innovative games, and your business will perform better. That's the why. The how, I think it starts, as we've mentioned up here, just having it part of your culture and your language. I agree you don't want to force it, but you have to have real drive behind it.
And you have to inspire them with vision, like this is where we're going, and it's going to be great.
Yeah, and it's tough. I mean, we have conversations about how do we bring more women into development, and commonly they'll say, well, I'll only feel comfortable when you have enough women. We're like, well, how do we get enough women if they don't feel comfortable coming because we don't have enough, right? And you get in this cycle. And so you have to be proactive and take some real steps, right? Not just gender diversity, but diversity in general, broadly. So yeah, blind boxing and resumes, that's worked. We've taken our diversity in the studio up to nearly 40% now across some
Congratulations,
all groups.
That's an amazing statistic.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think the culture committee and the women's group and some more of the working groups in the studio to help be advocates for those causes are also important.
Awesome. So Megan.
And there are lots more ideas on that you can get at the table when you walk out. Okay, I have a cheat sheet. So make curiosity a key part of everyone's job, to view the design of everything as a tool for connecting and uniting the company. Request ideas from the entire company, because you get your best ideas probably outside the department. And the other thing I wanted to say that, which is a little off topic, but the risk of not doing these kinds of things for diversity is that we will be stuck in the status quo. We will be perpetuating exclusivity by serving primarily the white male gender, and the state of the world reflects that. So we need to, all of us, and it's men and women partnering together to help each other expand each other's awareness and perspectives so that we can create awesome things together and expand revenues.
3 tips. I don't have a cheat sheet.
Oh, you can have one.
No, I mean, definitely what we talked about. I think Michael actually talks about it too. Growing your culture inside your company. Make sure that you manage it and you grow it well. Leadership. Allow leadership to rotate. We did one thing at the company, which we try to enforce it the best way we can, and we allow people to basically feel like leadership is not a burden that is permanent. We tell them your lead for the time the project lasts. If you want to keep doing that and nobody else has the drive to do it, you absolutely can. But we don't make people feel like, okay, you're no longer a lead, it's a demotion. You basically can step away from it because different ideas will come from a different lead. It doesn't always work. The bigger the team, sometimes it gets really messy. But with a small team, it does work. The last thing I was going to say was, and it's not so much a tip, but one of the steps that we often forget, I think all of us as a studio, it's celebrate the good that you do with diversity in your team, rather than look at all the bad that you haven't done. Because oftentimes, the easiest way to grow something is to look at the good sides of what you've done already, and then build on that. Oftentimes, we criticize a lot of the things that we don't do right, that we haven't gone far enough, that we're still behind. But as an industry, actually, if you really think about it for our age, we've done quite a lot. We have a lot to do, and I don't think it'll ever stop. But it's hard to forget well, it's easy to forget that you should celebrate the things actually that we've already basically accomplished.
Yeah, because it's
until
a
now.
celebration that keeps us
Yeah.
moving forward and will motivate your team to do more and more and
Exactly.
more. It's great leadership, and I think that just to close out, another great tip for fostering diversity is what we've all been doing right here, which is listening to each other. So thank you very much for spending some time with us, and look forward to more diversity.